When you dare to share, you break the silence. When you dare to share, you speak your truth. When you dare to share, you use the full strength of your voice. When you dare to share, it brings opportunity to own your story. So tell it, be heard, and at the same time, your sharing is someone else's learning, inspiration, motivation, empowerment, and hope. There's always an element to each of our stories that remains a secret. For some, we feel it's a dirty little secret. Dare to share your untold story exposes these secrets in a welcoming and positive way. I encourage each of you out there to dare yourself to share what is yours to tell. When we dare, it is the courage to do something really important. Let this be a vow to each and every single one of us that we take risk, we brave, confront, and face what is, while inspiring and empowering all communities. So let's break that silence and tap into mental beauty. This is Salima Jadavji, your podcast host, a practicing social worker, and your mental wellness connoisseur. Welcome to the Dare to Share Your Untold Story podcast, episode number 124, Walls Torn Down, a story of policing, PTSD, and healing. To all my fellow listeners, before we get started, I'm just dropping in a note to give you a heads up that this podcast might be emotionally triggering for you. We do invite guests onto the show who share openly about extremely difficult life moments with exposure and impact of what the struggles have been like. The intensity of each episode could have a variable impact on your emotional and mental well-being based on your own personal story. If at any point the topic becomes uncomfortable or upsetting to you in any way, please do not pressure yourself to listen. Instead, be kind to yourself, do some self-care, and perhaps give another episode a try. Today, I have the pleasure of introducing our courageous and daring guest, Glen Williams. For 26 years, Glen served as a police officer and detective in Salt Lake City, dedicating his life to protecting others and pursuing justice. Known for his tireless commitment and sharp investigative skills, he poured every ounce of himself into the role. But the demands of the job, along with years of exposure to traumatic events, took their toll. The cumulative impact of these experiences led to post-traumatic stress disorder, quietly consuming his life and shaping decisions that would ultimately leave him divorced, bankrupt, and struggling to recognize the man he once was. Through hard-won accountability and deep personal reflection, Glen began the journey of reconnecting with himself and rebuilding his life. Today, he lives with a renewed sense of openness, honesty, and purpose, sharing his story to inspire others on their own paths of healing. His resilience, integrity, and hard-fought growth now stand as a testament to the strength it takes to face trauma and the hope that lies beyond it. Well, welcome, Glen. Welcome to the Dare to Share Your Untold Story podcast.
Thank you, Salima. It is great to be here.
I'm so glad that you're here, Glen, and it's actually really great to have you as a guest on the show today. I'm really grateful for your willingness to be here and to be open and ready to share your story today. I am truly humbled to encounter guests like yourself who come onto the show and allow me to tap into their vulnerabilities, which then allows me to draw on their strength and their insight, and all that inspiration gets shared into this space, and it's just incredible. And so it's very important that we take a stance together to help break barriers of mental stigma. What do you think?
Absolutely. And there's so many stigmas out there.
Mm-hmm.
I know when I started working, if I talked about wanting to go talk to a therapist, they would have found me unfit for duty and let me go. And I'm grateful that things are changing. They're not there yet, but they're changing now.
Mm-hmm.
People are starting to recognize the damage to our people. And it's not just in law enforcement, but there's so much of it throughout society that are in a similar boat.
Yeah, across industries. And Glenn, in case you're still wondering, what this podcast is all about is bringing forward untold stories that people go through, whether directly about a mental health struggle or something else. And we know that no matter the story, there is impact on one's own mental health in some way, which remains tucked away. So this platform, it serves in a way to break the barriers of mental stigma that have been conditioned in our society. So today, together, for you and I, my hopeful mission is really for both of us to encourage people to share and tell what individuals typically have reservation to express. And of course, I continue to bring a trend forward. It's called the mental beauty rethink. So, Glenn, what immediately comes to mind when you hear the phrase the mental beauty rethink?
Look at the old me and I look at the new me, and I think it's a big difference between negative and positive thought. And I think that's a good starting point for that. I look at things completely different than I did 30 years ago now. And part of that is I'm getting old and just maybe a little more mature. I don't know. But also part of it is a positive effort to change the way I look at the world.
Yeah, I mean, the intention for me behind the term that I coined, mental beauty, and bringing forward the mental beauty rethink is really to look at shifting the way we are thinking about ourselves and other people and bringing that full acceptance of ourselves, all parts of ourselves, physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, all realms, especially mental wellness. Not deal with things in silos, but to be able to accept all parts of people, of persons, of ourselves, the good, bad, and the ugly, all parts, and to make space for it. And that nothing has to be seen in a judgmental way of something being good or bad or right or wrong. It's just, this is all parts of it.
Getting rid of judgment then.
Yeah, the hope was to be able to see it as an invitational way to see it in a different light.
Yeah. Because what's good for me may not be good for you. And what's bad for me may not be bad for you. Yeah.
Right. But we can accept it all, right? And make space for it. Just the way we might agree to disagree, right? That's making space for it. That's allowing an opportunity to be open about something that you may not feel for, but it's still part of someone else's process.
Yeah, because we don't know what they've been through, and we don't know what's the old saying, walk a mile in my shoes. And we've not done that. And until we actually can see that, there's no way we're going to relate at all. So we have to let a lot of the garbage go and get rid of that judgment. And that's a huge part of self accountability.
Right. And when we allow ourselves to have that process, we also allow ourselves to be curious. So, just like you're saying, we don't really know what that person's story is about or what they've gone through or what path they're walking or going through. If we're more accepting of circumstances, we can get curious. You seem to be going through something. How can I help you? Or, is there something that I can do to make your day better today? You mentioned this one thing before. Did you ever want to talk about it? Just know I'm here, right? That even those small things can become now extensions of invitations to open dialogue even further.
But one of the keys to that is being sincere and not just going through the motions.
Of course.
Because I know how many guys I've walked up the hallway at work. Hey, how you doing? Oh, I'm fine. And now when I hear I'm fine, I'm thinking, okay, what's going on? There's something not right, because that's such a standard answer that has no meaning.
Right. Well, I mean, I think in society we're conditioned that those are pleasantries and the greetings and pleasantries, and that's how we're supposed to respond to people. Is no one really wants to know how I'm feeling, but that's why I encourage people to just show up fully, and that's part of what the mental beauty message is, right? Like, let's accept all parts.
Yeah. So, and you said something, we're conditioned not to. Why don't we want to know? That's a problem with us.
Right. And so it's just a process of deconditioning, right? So sometimes when people say to me, I'm fine, I'm like, well, are you sure you are? Not that I don't want to believe you, but it's okay if you're not fine. And it's okay if you want to tell me what's going on. So I find that when we're more present, when we can see mental beauty as part of the package, part of the process, it allows us to show up differently for others as well.
And when we create that mental beauty, excuse me, that affects our decision making and our lives tremendously.
Exactly. Well, I really appreciated hearing your take on mental beauty, Glenn. That's pretty awesome. I appreciate that. So that brings us to our deep dive. Are you ready to uncover your untold story? Shall we go right into it?
Let's do it.
Wonderful. All right, Glenn, for our first question, give us the newspaper headline of how you would title your untold story. How would it read?
Moment by moment.
Moment by moment. So, without giving away your story at this point, Can you say a little bit more about what this title means to you?
As humans are creatures of habit. And how many of us go through our day-to-day activities making unconscious decisions? I did it yesterday, I did it today, I did it the day before, I'm going to do it tomorrow, and we don't even think about it. And how many things do we miss because we're going through the day unconsciously? So my objective and what I really work hard at now, and I don't get it right all the time, is making conscious decisions moment by moment. As I go out the door, do I go to the same door in my car and I do the same process, or do I change things up just a little bit and I open the garage door and look out there in the street first before I go jump in the car and back up? I mean, if I do that, I might catch the 3-year-old in his trike in the driveway before I back up. I mean, things like just little things like that. How many little things have turned into huge things? So the best time to solve a problem is before it happens, when it's little, and we can only do that by being conscious of everything around us. And it's tiring, but we can be conscious of what's going on around us all the time.
Yeah. I like how you've positioned that. That's neat. Well, Glenn, now that you have given us the headline and given us that very intriguing message about your headline moment by moment and making conscious decisions moment by moment, let's get right into your untold story. Tell us what it's all about. Give us that snapshot: who, what, when, where, all the themes. Let's hear it.
Well, I was a police officer, detective for 26 years. And during that time, police officers deal with bad people or good people having a really bad day. There's not a lot of dealing with good stuff all the time. And we see things that the majority of people do not want to see.
Right.
And over those 26 years, I kind of let the job become my life. If somebody asked me who I was, I'd say I'm a cop. And it took me a few years after I retired to realize I'm not a cop. I worked as a cop. And that shading of my mentality at that time, the work came first. Work came first. And if they wanted overtime, I was there. And if they needed a volunteer, I was there. And it got to the point where I put my job above everything.
Mm-hmm.
What I saw at work, I never talked about at home because I didn't want my wife to worry. And that led to bricks in the wall. And slowly over the years, those bricks got bigger and bigger and bigger, and the wall got bigger and bigger until we weren't talking about anything. And I ended up leaving that marriage, divorced, and in the process ended up bankrupt, lost everything, made some really bad decisions. And I could blame it on PTSD. They were PTSD related decisions, but I have to be self accountable. I'm the one that made the decision.
Mm-hmm.
Even though it was influenced by PTSD, I'm still the one that made the decision. And that's the only way I can change things and make better decisions.
Right.
I had an affair. It was part of that thrill seeking part that just something I wasn't ever planned on doing, but it happened.
Right.
And I'm not proud of that. It'll never happen again. That's for sure. But it's just something, one of the examples. Anyway, I ended up divorced, and then I remarried to the lady I had the affair with, which again was a bad decision.
Right.
Needless to say, and these weren't short 2 or 3 years. I was married 19 years the first time and 13 the second time. So it's not, I don't quit. I really worked at making things go. But after 13 years, I ended up divorced again. And my PTSD was to the point that I was having nightmares 3, 4 times a week. I was not in good shape. And I wonder, even today now, how did I work and do a good job when I couldn't even take care of myself?
So you ask yourself that question, like, how did I operate in that way? How did I function? How was I operating?
Yeah, I have no clue how I did. I know I made nothing major, but minor mistakes here and there. And I just wonder how much better I could have been. I ended up living at my cabin by myself for 3 years. During that 3 years, when I started up there, I drove 57 miles to work, got up at 3:30 in the morning, got my equipment and everything for work and went to work. And then when I got off, I'd drive 57 miles back home.
So Glenn, you were still working when you were living in the cabin, and driving back and forth was for work every day.
Yes. And I got in some really bad habits. I was eating junk food. I buying just garbage on the way home to eat because the time and stuff. When I got home, I'd sit down and I didn't overdo it too much. I'd make myself 2 drinks a night, but they were 34 ounces each.
Mm-hmm.
I was feeling no pain. And when I was inebriated a little bit, I didn't have nightmares for a while. But as I was sitting there one day, I'm looking out the window of my cabin. I've got deer walking by in the woods. It's beautiful.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
It's spring day. And I got looking at that and I saw my reflection in the mirror. And I thought, what are you doing? The only person you're hurting is you. Nobody else cares. You're divorced, you're alone, and that life is past. You're only hurting yourself. I had the next day off. I woke up. I went for a walk in the woods around my cabin. It was beautiful up there. And I started seeing things that I hadn't seen in a long time, hearing the rustle of the wind in the aspen trees and the pines moving back and forth. And even had to pause to let a mother moose and her baby go because I don't want to get too close to them. And I suddenly realized I'm missing out on a lot of things
Mm.
that could be better. So I actually started changing what I did that day. I was 16 miles from town, so I knew once I got home I wasn't going back to town. So I threw my gym bag in my car and I'd stop at the gym every other day on the way home.
Okay.
And I started working out again. And I've always been very physically active. Kind of let that go going through the divorce and everything. And I started working out again. Then I started having good food in my cabin and eating properly.
Right.
I quit drinking.
Okay.
And I just started feeling better physically. And that physical feeling helped me emotionally. And then I started looking for things to figure out. I actually talked with a therapist, paid for it for my own dime because I didn't want anybody to know. And I got to talk to a therapist about going through things and work through some of the major issues that I was going through that were part of the divorce. And then I started doing some personal development training, and I actually was able, with their help, to tear down the walls that I had built around me.
Mm.
I used a wall of arrogance to keep people away from me. And in reality, I thought it was protecting me, but subconsciously it wasn't. It was hurting me.
Right.
I suddenly realized that. And I mean, not suddenly, we're talking over a year's time working into this. I got to start looking at who I am again. It took a year, year and a half, but I finally got back in touch with the real me.
Right.
I'm a good guy. I'm a spiritual guy, and I help others a lot. That's who I am. I got back in touch with that and started really living my life and realize and separating my life. I'm no longer a cop. Shortly after that, I retired as I was going through this process.
When did you retire, Glenn?
I retired in 2016.
Okay.
I didn't just quit working. I went and started doing some other things. But yeah, as I was going through these things, I didn't like who I had become. I'd become codependent of all things, which I didn't think that I had. I started opening up, and like we talked about the moment by moment, I started looking at things a little more analytically, making better decisions, and not just going through the motions like a lot of us do in life. It's such a bad habit. I started realizing I could change things. And I had to go through a lot of different things to get to that point,
Right.
different exercises and things. And I learned actually that I actually got a pencil and notebook and started drawing. I don't draw very well, but I liked it and it was fun.
You're just your creative way.
Yeah. And I let it go. And I still have that notebook and it's not even complete and I'll add to it someday. But it's, creativity, things that I had never really even thought of were starting to open up and I was seeing things in a whole different light. That's my journey now. And up to this point, now I travel around. I talk to police departments about communication and relations because communication and started developing better relationships and communicating. And I'm very open. I like to be open, honest. Being authentic is a key. And so I'll tell you what I think and where it's at.
I appreciate that so far you've really painted the picture of where you started for 26 years, your role in law enforcement, all the things that you developed along the way, the struggles and strife that you faced, your process up to your time of retirement. But before you share more about what it has inspired you to do and where you've taken your learnings, I'm curious if we can go back to some of that and if I can ask you if I could tap into some of the things that you shared, if we can expand on some of that. Is that okay for you?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Wonderful. What I'm really curious about is you mentioned that there were a lot of things that you saw on the job that you didn't want to bring home because in your mind, you are protecting your wife, you're protecting your family. You don't want them to be worried. And so you thought it was in the name of protection that you weren't doing that, right? And you saw later on that just helped you build a brick wall, didn't serve a purpose the way you really wanted it to serve, right? And so, what I'm curious about in that way is things that you saw. I mean, you don't have to go into a lot of detail or share anything that would expose someone, but can you share a little bit about what kinds of things that you did see?
Yeah, I'll share a couple of instances. One night, about 2 in the morning, I got a call to back an officer up, and our city is in a valley and up on a mountainside. We got a call up there. So I pulled in, shut my lights off. The roadway is basically a 1 lane road with a hillside going up on the right and about a 10-foot drop off on the left, and it's dead ends. As I pulled up behind him, I walked up to his driver's door to find out what's going on. And I see a BMW sitting in front of him about 20 feet with his spotlight on him, two people in it. And this is March in Utah, so it's chilly. We've all got long johns and it's cold. They've got their cars running with the heaters on, and I'm standing by the door. And he's explaining to me this guy had been walking out of this dark, and these are what we call mini mansions, very well to do area. And so it's one reason he was kind of questioning things, because a BMW would fit up there. And as he's talking to me, all of a sudden I heard the scratch of the tires on gravel. And as I stepped away from his doorway, the car was coming right at me.
Oh my.
I had nowhere to go because 10-foot drop off on the other way and the truck on my side, and there's only room for one car. And the car is coming at me quickly. So I drew my weapon, my handgun. I don't even remember drawing the weapon. I'm just looking over it, and I'm looking right through the sights at the driver's forehead. I could see the pores of skin on a female driver's forehead over the steering wheel. And as I'm backpedaling and trying to get far enough back I get somewhere, the car is just coming at me, and I start squeezing the trigger so I can stop her from running me over. Because I was squeezing the trigger, and my weapon would not go off. And as I got to the back of the truck, the car stopped. As I bent my knee forward, I was touching the bumper.
Mm-hmm.
And I still get tears talking about this, but that's okay.
Right. Yeah. Just take your time.
It scared me to death, but we got them out, and turns out the BMW stolen. He had a bag of stuff that he'd thrown in the back of the car. During the interview afterward, but the guy was an ex-con, and he'd already been in prison. He says, "Man, if I'd been driving, you'd be dead." I'm grateful for so many little things that occurred that night to keep me from getting hurt, but in reality also keep anybody from getting hurt. Because the girl, when we interviewed her, and she says, "Why'd you pull that cannon on me?" And I would imagine if I could see the pores of skin on her forehead, that barrel looked like it was cannon size.
Right.
Anyway, she was a 22-year-old female, no criminal history, and I don't know whatever happened to her. But as I look at things in the past or that happened, I actually had a new weapon in the back of my car. I had not qualified with it yet, so I was not allowed to carry it yet. And the trigger pull on that is nice and easy. If I had that one in my hand, I may have taken her life.
Right.
If he had been driving, he would have probably seriously attempted to take mine. He wouldn't have stopped. What's the chances that officer just patrolling that street at that minute to watch him walking out with a bag in his hands to raise his suspicions? I mean, there are just so many little things that happen, preventing going bad. But yeah, that one was a little exciting.
To remember that the experiences don't necessarily have to be exciting, but it does sound like there were a lot of things happening that night.
Yeah.
The detail that you painted in this example shows that if you were having encounters like that on a regular basis, cumulatively, of course, it's going to take not just a physical toll or an emotional toll, it will take a mental toll as well, which is consistent with how PTSD develops.
I had another case. I was an 18-year officer and got a call of a child, a 3-year-old boy was missing.
Mm-hmm.
So we went to their apartment complex where they lived and searched the inside of the house first, and he wasn't there.
Right.
Started searching the outside, and we looked and looked and looked, and after 40 minutes, we could not find him. We gathered in the parking lot of the apartment complex, and there happened to be a fountain there where some teenagers the night before had poured soap suds into this fountain. And so there were soapy bubbles 15 feet high out of this fountain overflowing out onto the parking lot. And as we stood there going, okay, now where do we go? A little breeze just came up. And as we kind of turned, looked over my shoulder, I saw a red shoe in the water. He'd been there the entire time and we couldn't see him. Pulled him out, did CPR, did everything could. And we're not able to bring him back. As you watch a group of, pardon my French, but hard ass guys and just watch their shoulders slump because they couldn't save a kid.
Mm-hmm.
It was hard.
Mm-hmm.
But one good thing came out of it for me. This was the first time in my career. My lieutenant came over. He put his arm around me. He says, "Are you okay, brother?"
Yeah.
And for the first time in my career, I was able to admit, no, I was not.
Right.
First time anybody asked, 18 years.
Right.
And that in and of itself may have been kind of the start to what I'm doing now.
Yeah. Because it was the first time that you had an opportunity for you to feel like, okay, someone gets me. Someone has taken the time to see that I might need something, that I might not be okay, and permission to also come to terms with maybe I'm not okay.
Yeah, it's okay to not be okay because, those are just two instances and there's a lot of them.
I'm sure there's so many others. Those two instances that you've just described just now, they paint a big picture of the heaviness and the intensity of what you experience. And these are quick moments that you have to take actions on, and where you also carry the weight of the world on your shoulders when you feel responsible for something. Even if it's not your responsibility, you are doing your job, you are doing your best.
But it wasn't good enough.
Well, yes, that's the narrative you tell yourself, right? That it's not good enough. And sure, and that weighs on you.
Yeah, I'm a first aid CPR instructor. I know that if they're doing CPR, they're already dead. If you bring them back, it's a miracle. I know that.
Right. But still to experience it, it's a very rough go.
Yeah, especially with a little child.
Of course, when it's a young child, it becomes that much more sensitive for sure. And so, if these are only two of so many examples of what you'd gone through, what you witnessed, what you saw, whether the outcomes were successful or not, that takes an immense toll on the mind, body, and soul, right? It really does take a huge toll in all realms. The fact that you share the details about what you went through, what it was like, how you developed PTSD, how PTSD ran your life, the decisions that you made under that influence, under that PTSD spell, as well as the self accountability that you've taken. And since retiring from law enforcement, the pivots and shifts that you've taken, it is quite incredible. I'm curious, Glenn, when people come to see me for therapy, individuals, they're typically in one of three places. Some people are getting started where they're just like, hey, you know what? I want to start therapy. I want to start working on different things in my life, different themes. I want to become the best version of myself. Some people are in the thick of something. Maybe there's an acute stressor that they're dealing with. They're in the middle of something, or some old issue has rehashed. And so they want to work on that as well as navigate other parts of their life. And some people are looking back, where maybe they want to get some closure on something. Maybe they want to start understanding things from their past so that they can create a path forward for themselves. So for you, where in the journey would you say that you are based on your untold story, based on the things that you're sharing today? Would you say that you are getting started, in the middle, or looking back?
I would say I'm in the middle. I mean, I've had to look back
Mm-hmm.
to work on healing, and I've done that, and I've done a lot of work on that. In fact, I would say that I'm in the middle. I would not say I'm in the end and healed because healing is an ongoing, continual process, probably till the day I die. Every once in a while, it's like I was having nightmares 3, 4 times a week. Now I have them once or twice a year.
Mm-hmm. That's a big shift.
And the last one had nothing to do with my law enforcement career, which is like a first.
Mm-hmm.
So I know I'm healing and I know I've learned tools to use to help me get there. So I would say I'm in the end process still, because I think if anybody says they're completely healed, they're lying to themselves because there's always a trigger.
Right. So I guess what I was sort of focusing on is, of course, healing is a journey and there are always different parts to heal, and healing is evolving, but just more in terms of your story, in terms of where you're at, which for some people, they might be looking back. But in terms of what you've shared, I hear how this question resonates for you, and I hear what it means for you to say, I am in the middle. And while I have looked back, I'm not quite completely there yet, because that's what this would mean for me. But I also see that you're kind of in betweeny. You're not like, you're in the middle, but not quite at the end. Yes, that's what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
So, Glen, I'm very curious about how your untold story has affected your mental health. So far, there were several things that you shared that led me to know that mental health had impacts along the way, given the line of your work, what you witnessed, what you saw, how you dealt with things. You talk about the PTSD and how that looked like for you, and having, nightmares 3 to 4 times a week, and having like shut down communication, even though it was in the name of protecting, but still there was all that stuff going on. Maybe you can share a little bit about, what did PTSD look like for you? What were the PTSD symptoms that you experienced? Because that would give people an understanding of how your mental health was affected in that way.
It started off with the not talking and just shutting down. And I realized looking back that I didn't want to talk about it again because I didn't want to remember it.
Mm-hmm.
I was blocking things out. That's why I did not want to talk about it to anybody, which was one of the worst things I could have done.
Right.
And anxiety. I was so afraid of making a mistake. I made decisions based on that instead of on what was going to work best.
Mm-hmm.
Those decisions affected me and made things a lot more difficult, whether that be at home or at work. Those are the type of things that, as I went through, and then I tried to hide it and mask it. I did a little thrill seeking, because part of PTSD is you do a little thrill seeking. And that's where I didn't realize it at the time, but I was in a lot of foot chases and fights.
Right.
And as I look back now, a lot of those I actually talked myself into.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody would challenge me, I would challenge them right back. I wasn't going to back down. And that was PTSD related. My communication was not good. When I go home with my kids, it was instant anger if something went back off, and catch myself, but it was too late.
Right. But those are all trauma responses, right? That's your nervous system being completely dysregulated.
Yeah.
You might not have understood what all that was about, right?
Oh, not at all.
But that's in fact what was going on for you.
Absolutely. I didn't understand at all, but that's one of the reasons I reacted back then.
Yeah. Those are all the reactions. And it was taking a toll physically, as you said, too, right? Like you were having these night terrors or nightmares, and I'm assuming flashbacks and all of that, too, right?
Yes.
And you saw a lot of gruesome stuff, too, right? Like,
Oh, yeah. When I worked for transit police for a while, and they called me Dr. Death, because every time I came to work, somebody stepped in front of a train. And if you've ever had to go pick up body parts and clean things up and stuff, those are, that's on the realm of things fairly minor,
but still stuff you had to do, and might be minor for the job, but not necessarily for just someone who's not in the field, right? And I think it's still a lot for a person in the field.
yeah.
Like we take that for granted, right? We just try to brush it off like, oh, no big deal. There's more intense things. But no, each thing is intense, and we need to honor that intensity. But what I'm also curious about, though, Glen, is at home. I mean, I know you were keeping it from your wife, not bringing work home at all. Didn't anyone notice or have any awareness of the kind of work that you do and the kind of stuff that you would be a witness to or experiencing?
We knew it was not going to be pretty,
Mm-hmm.
but I know I didn't know to the extent. And I didn't know that it was going to be fairly common. I mean, the statistics say that law enforcement officers see about 178 severe traumatic events in a 20-year career,
Wow, that's a lot.
whereas normal citizen sees 4, maybe 5. I had no clue there. And back then, you just sucked it up. And I mean, that's what we got told, suck it up.
Yeah, the suck it up mentality. That kind of conditioning is so harmful. But again, back at the time you were working with the culture, that was the expectation, the mentality behind it. So you were just trying to stay afloat doing what you did.
Yeah, tried to survive the job. When you live in survival mode, even that in itself is traumatic.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not a good situation to be in. But that's kind of where we're at. And I talk to guys today, and they'll say something, and it's exactly what I was feeling back, and I can almost tell where they are in their career by what they say.
Mm-hmm.
It's just so modeled, and that doesn't mean everybody's alike, but I just can see things a lot more clearly than I did back then.
Of course. Another thing I'm really curious about in terms of how your mental health was affected is when you're not able to feel like you can share what you've experienced, like what happened, like what you were going through in the thick of your career, did you not feel isolation?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. I couldn't talk to my wife. I could talk with the guys on my shift a little bit because they were there with me, but that's not the same because it's not getting it out. It's just rehashing it. And that's not the same. And I never could say how I felt about it
Hmm.
because vulnerability was looked on as a weakness. And I'll tell you right now, vulnerability is strength.
Yes, I second that for sure.
But at that time, it was a weakness because if you showed emotions or you showed anything, you were weak, is how you were judged, and that's a very poor judgment. And we talked a little earlier about judgment. People are letting that go a little bit now, um,
Right.
but it's still there, and it's sad that it's not changing faster. But take what we can get.
Yeah. But I really appreciate that you shared all these elements with me and that you can speak openly and also share what you're recognizing now that you have clarity on that you had no idea when you were in the middle of all the dysregulation and all the complicated parts that were happening simultaneously. Did any physician or doctor, anyone tell you that you suffered from depression or felt that the isolation that you were experiencing was related to depression or anything like that?
No, I never talked to anybody about that. Throughout my entire life, I've always been a very positive guy, but I look at that when I was there, then I wasn't real positive. In fact, I was trained into us that we suspect everybody and everybody's a potential threat, which that is a whole mentality that will destroy you also.
Yeah.
That's one of the things I fight for now is to change that mentality because not everybody's bad.
Well, because they want you to be on the lookout, right? They want you to be vigilant. The training is about being vigilant and paying attention to cues and subtleties. It's not meant to actually think that every person is a threat, but somehow that's kind of what filters through in the training and culture and what's accepted and what's not accepted. It's easy for it to translate into every person's a threat.
Yeah. Well, and in fact, that got pointed out to me after I married my wife now. We walked into a restaurant and she looked at me. She says, "Is there any way that I can sit somewhere where I'm not looking at a wall?" And it was so habit formed in me to sit with my back to the wall so I could see the door that I didn't even realize I was doing it.
Right.
And so we came to an understanding. And she'll ask me, "Are you okay if not sitting against the wall?" I say, "Yeah, I'm fine today." Or we'll find a table that is the doors to the side.
That also speaks to the communication, the nonverbal communication, understanding each other's needs and expressing it and checking in with each other. So that shows volumes of the work you've done on yourself, which is quite incredible. And speaking of your key message, what would you want your key message to the listeners of the show to be? What do you want them to know?
Yeah, what I've discovered is communication is the key. You've got to get these things out or they will eat you alive. So whether it be a therapist, a spouse, a friend, it doesn't matter. Get them out because your well-being is there. And if you're not okay, it's hard for you to help anybody else. It's okay to talk. And it's okay to not be okay. And it's okay to talk about it because that's the only way you're going to make it okay.
Yeah. Just talk about it anyway, right? No matter what it is, just talk about it.
I am now it pretty much it comes into my head, it comes out because I just don't hold anything back. I did that for too many years and all it did was cause me pain. And I'm not going to do that again. And so that's kind of my message is talk, talk, talk and get it out.
Hmm. Communication, it really, really improves dynamics in relationships and just the interpersonal communication overall. It just strengthens in so many ways.
Even sometimes you say things that they don't want to hear. That's what relationships are about. You don't have to be brutal about it, but you can be honest and say what you want to say without being negative. And I'm huge on positivity.
Right. But you got to speak your truth, right? At Dare to Heal, I have a trademark a statement that I say often, which is letting yourself get comfortably uncomfortable, right? So just sharing what's really true and authentic to you, but speaking up because you need to.
Yeah, if you don't, then you're going nowhere. It's like if I don't ask a question, if I ask a yes or no question, if I don't ask the question, it's an automatic no. I've said it to myself. And so get it out there and get it open and be amazed at I'm amazed at how many things just work out when you do that.
Of course. Absolutely.
So, Glenn, what would you say, what was your game changer inspiration? Something that's close to you that reflects your untold story, the point where you were able to pivot. Was there like a book, a quote, an event, a person? Was there something there that was like, okay, this was the moment?
That's a hard question for me because there were a lot of little moments. Some of the ones I started making my pivot when I started talking and when I got things out, when I sit up the cabin by myself. Therapists use journaling, and I love journaling. But as I was going through things that had happened to me and that were still affecting me and creating nightmares and things like that, all of a sudden I looked down and I had like 50 to 100 pages written. And I just suddenly started realizing with self accountability, I got to look at what I did that did not work and how I would do it differently now.
Right. So for you, it was micro moments, right? That was your inspiration. That was your pivot. But you were really working the process. That's quite interesting.
By working the process, it actually wakened up my mind and my imagination. I started thinking of things that I had never really even thought of. I've never been super creative, but all of a sudden now here I am writing these things and I went, oh, yeah, I can do this. And so that's kind of what I do now. But the journaling was a big part of it.
Right. Oh, journaling is great. Yes. But sometimes once you tap in, you don't really always know what's going to pour out, but you clearly were feeling safe in that process to do that. So that's incredible.
All these little things just started adding up. Like I never did meditation, and I started doing meditation. And believe it or not, when I was a cop, if somebody said they were going to a drum circle, I thought, oh, a bunch of hippies smoking weed, and that's what you're going to. But now I discovered these shaman-led healing drum circles.
Mm-hmm.
And a very good friend of mine is in that, and so I started going to those, and I still go to this day periodically, and it was amazing. Or Tibetan bowls,
Right. Oh, those are great. I have one.
that's my absolute favorite. I go into trances with that, and it's awesome.
Wonderful. Thank you. So, what's a cause or an organization that's been impactful to you on your journey that you would like to give a shout out to?
I actually went through a program called Impact Trainings.
Okay.
They really assisted me in tearing down the walls that I had built around me and getting back in touch with the real me. That was part of the process during those 3 years at my cabin. I was just amazed at what I had become and who I am now by the end of a year or so worth of stuff that I went through. There's a lot of opportunity if people will go in and be open and honest with yourself. And that's the key.
That's wonderful. To be open and honest with yourself in a safe, invitational way, like in a space that allows that openness, I think is so incredible. So tell us, Glenn, how can people connect with you if they would like to? Where are you findable?
My website is gdub author.com. I have my book is on Amazon and Barnes and Noble and a whole bunch of others, but it's called Bridging the Gap because I created gaps in my life, and this is the process I was bridging those gaps. And then I in a documentary is there something going on at home, also available on Amazon, which talks about how trauma affects our families. I'm amazed to be part of that and won a whole bunch of awards. Yes, I'm on Facebook, Twitter under my name.
We've actually included them on your show notes page. So if anybody goes on to daretoshare.co and types in Glenn Williams or episode 124, boom, all the ways that they can find you. So that's fantastic.
Awesome.
So guess what, Glenn? You've just dared yourself to share. Congratulations. You did it. Fantastic.
I appreciate the opportunity and hopefully it says something that will give somebody a little help. Just go out, be positive, do the best you can, and don't look down on yourself because everybody makes mistakes, and those are all not mistakes; they're learning opportunities.
Of course. On a serious note, Glenn, I would like to just take a moment to express my gratitude for the deep story shared in this space today. You speaking openly about your journey with PTSD and how relentless you were in your journey through self accountability, as you named it, and where it has taken you and brought you, and the types of work that you're involved in now. This has been so incredibly precious for me to hear all the developments and all the strides and all the details that you shared along the way. So I'm truly grateful to have been able to hear and witness your story today. So thank you for the deep conversation and for all the daring and sharing.
And thank you for the challenge.
It's my pleasure. And once again, Glen, thank you for being part of Dare to Share Your Untold Story and helping to be a voice in breaking down the barriers of mental stigma.
To all of our listeners, if you like what you've been hearing on this podcast and you want to be part of breaking down barriers of mental stigma, I invite you to go wherever you are listening to the episode and hit subscribe. Leave us a comment or a review of the episode and maybe how you relate to it. To learn more about what we offer, visit www.daretoheal.co. And if you are feeling ready and brave to share, please submit your story by visiting www.daretoshare.co. Thanks for joining in.